our culture is special. But you should apply that culture with the right mood, the right motivation, then you can experience the speciality, the sweetness. So our guru in India, he said, festivals are for the service and pleasure of God. And we come together to try to please God. And he reciprocates, feeling our devotion, he showers us with his love. That makes a festival very sweet. So yesterday we cooked 60, we were planning to cook just afternoon time. We said, you know what? Let's make chappan bhog for Krishna. That means in India, there's the culture of making 56 items for a Vishnu or Krishna temple. And we just had an afternoon, we had a morning and a mid-morning talk. And then we said, you know what? Let's make a feast for Krishna. You know, every day we cook for festivals especially, but every day is actually, you know, we're always making feasts. But we said, okay, let's make an over-the-top feast. Let's try to make, you know, as many preparations as we can. And we went shopping, and our Vrindavan Chandraprabhu started cooking, and we got back, and like 4 o'clock we started, and then we have 10 burners in that one kitchen, and then our Chandrika Mataji has 4 burners in her kitchen with Mangala Gita, and by 6:30 we had made 68 preparations. Ibo. And not like cheating, you know? Sometimes people do it like that. No, you know, I bought bags of M&Ms and I separated yellow and brown, and yellow M&M prep, brown M&M prep. You know, no. Everything was like, you know, we made many kinds of pakoras. What did we make? We made spinach pakora, pepper pakora, banana pakora. Come on, help me out here. Eggplant pakora. Jalapeno pakora, zucchini pakora. Okay, anything else? I think that was it. Then we made a sprouted chickpea, paneer, tomato stir fry. We made many varieties. We made yogurt okra. We made different bean dishes. We made dals. We made the rajma. We made like 5-6 kinds of rice. Vrindavan Chandraprabhu was making one after another. He made like these, you make a payasana. It's called, one is payasana, a special kind of kheer, but then there's something called pushpanna. Dry rice, but very sweet, you know, with thick milk and cardamom and nuts and raisins. So 5-6 kinds of rice. And we probably made 12-13 sabjis, at least. And then we made 5 kinds of halava. First one we made was mango, saffron, golden raisin, cashew. Was there cashew in it? And then we made smashed boysenberry, nutmeg. And then we made blueberry vanilla. And then we made strawberry. And then we made pineapple. Yes. Okay, and then how many kinds of sweets? We made saffron sandesh, we made vanilla sandesh, we made, Mataji made nice sweet balls, we made a few other kinds of sweet balls, we made, the other day also we made a bunch of cheesecakes. People say, why are you going all this effort cooking so many different things? You're such enjoyers. Such bogies, right? What else do we make, you know? I'll get into this topic of what it means to be an enjoyer, but first, we have to remember the festival. Friday we prepared, right? We had a nice kirtans Friday evening and some katha. We began our celebrations. People began arriving. Then Saturday morning, Saturday mid-morning, we had classes. And then Saturday evening, I don't even remember what we did, but it was nice. Right? After a festival, it's just like, today's it's hard to remember. But then Sunday we had a very special day. Again, 3 classes Sunday, right? Yeah, we had 3 classes Sunday, kirtan, a nice prasadam, big feasts, people coming from, devotees came from South Carolina, our Vrinda Didi, and from Long Island, Krishna Chandraprabhu. We had from Cleveland, Chutabrun family. From here, we have our Rupan Kumari from New Paltz. We have Jayashri and Rasanidhi and Narayani from down the street. We have all the devotees here. From Boston, Aman Prabhu, Swasti Didi, from where else? From all over. Oh, from Syracuse, Deidre, from the Flowering Sun Ashram, right? From Long Island, we have Marilyn. Okay, Marilyn. The nice thing about our festivals is that some people come Friday and then stay half Saturday and they have to go. Some people come Saturday and stay Sunday. Some people come Sunday. Some people come Monday, then stay Tuesday. So it's like the festival continues, you know? But it's a very sweet festival. I'm forgetting people, I'm sure, but a very, very sweet festival. And we're very grateful to participate in this festival. But what is the aim of the festival? To please Krishna, to please God, and to express the joy of love for God, to express the joy of love and the joy of service. People think service is boring, service is a chore, but service is a joy, and love is a joy. It's called Sevananda Premananda. So service is joyful. If service isn't joyful, it means a few things, but we won't get into that. Right? Sometimes service isn't joyful, but it's when you love God, service is joyful because it's how you express your love. You think, oh, I love you so much. I'm going to try to make a halava that expresses my love for you. You know, what kind? And we're thinking, you know, we went to the store and we thought, what kind? Oh, and we bathed him with berry juice smoothie, with pineapple smoothie, with mango smoothie, with milk, with yogurt, with honey, with ghee, with camphor, with sandal paste, with the holy rivers invoked. In this way, we express our love for Krishna, and it's joyful. And the activity of the soul in love of God is called service. Does that make sense? Soul is not just awareness. Soul is energy. All right? So when you realize God and your relationship as part and parcel of the supreme whole, the soul, and your relation with God, then your heart fills with joy. And you express that joy in your heart as service, because the soul is not just existence and awareness, sat chit, existence and awareness. It's ananda, it's joy, it's bliss. But what is that bliss? The bliss is the relationship, right? When were you happiest in life? In relationships. We talked about this the other day, you know? This is why I'm talking about the cooking thing. It's like, did we cook these things for ourselves? People think you're such enjoyers. You know, you're not happy with like feasting every day. You had to make 65 plus items. But you know, that day we cooked it and we didn't eat anything. We had a little grain-free items, right? We had some simple potato, zucchini, very tasty dish. And we had a cucumber raita and we had some sweet balls. But for the most part, you know, the purpose of our cooking is not to satisfy our palate, our tongue. It's try to satisfy the tongue of the palate of God. What, you know, you could say that's a very audacious kind of sentiment and statement, but it is a mood. And the Lord accepts our mood. That's the scriptural statement. Bhava grahi janardana. God accepts your mood of devotion. So if you think, oh Lord, today I'm going to make this for you, and you do it, this is the mood of Radharani. Every day she's cooking for Krishna. And every day he's relishing her love in varieties of preparations. And Lord Chaitanya, every day his mother, Sachimata, Vishnupriya, his wife, Lakshmi Priya, Gadadhar Pandit is, if you read the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, his life, there's many occasions of great feasts they prepared. At the same time, in his later pastimes, Lord Chaitanya was a renunciant. He ate very simply. And the Goswamis, Raghunath Das Goswami, they ate very simply. Raghunath Das Goswami, what would he do? He would take leftover grains of rice that were cooked and given to the Lord and were thrown out and the cows had eaten, and whatever the cows left over, because they cook for tens of thousands of people. So if you're cooking for tens of thousands, sometimes there's a little leftovers, you know. So the leftovers they give to the cows. And what the cows didn't finish, this saint, Raghunath Das, would go and eat. He would wash it, he would put a little salt, and he would eat it. One day, Lord Chaitanya ran. He had asked, what is Raghunath doing? Raghunath was a prince, and he ran away from home. He kept trying to run away from home, and his parents kept, you know, I guess he was under 18 or something. I don't know exactly the details. But his parents, I don't know, in India, I don't think they have the same liberties as we do in American life. But Because I know kids in India after they're 18 and you still can't leave home. You can't, I'm going to go and become a monk and your parents can allow it? No siree. But he kept trying to run away from home and they kept sending guards out to find him and search and bring him back home. He had so much love of God awakening his heart. He thought, I want to run to Lord Chaitanya. And they kept capturing him and bringing him back home. So one day he made an excuse to escape. He said his guru needed a priest for his temple. He had a guru called Yadunandanacharya. So he needs someone to help. He's going on travels and he has a deity at home. So I'm going to go and help for 2 days, right? And so the guards were accompanying him, but he said, I just need to, just give me a little privacy for a few minutes. I need to go answer nature's call. He made some excuse. He just ran off into the woods. There's the details of the story. And, the details aren't, the point is important. What's the mood? He ran off into the woods day and night. He didn't take the main roads because again and again he had been brought back home. He was married to the most beautiful girl in India. And his mother told her husband, you should chain him to the household. Give him all the nice food and all the good, anything pleasurable to enjoy, but you should also keep him on a chain because he keeps running away. And his father, her husband said, you know what? If the opulence of a prince cannot bind him, if the most beautiful woman in India cannot bind him, how will a chain bind him? What can we do? We'll try our best. So he escaped into the woods and he was running day and night to get to his Lord. And he arrived at Lord Chaitanya's lotus feet in Puri. And he fell at his feet and Lord Chaitanya embraced him and said, how fortunate you are. You've escaped the dry, dark well of material life. Right? Because that joy of love of God has arisen in your heart. So he lived there. And, we're talking about feasts, so this is a relevant discussion. His father finally came to accept it, In the 60s and 70s, a lot of kids did that, right? Dropped out. Did you drop out?
After my junior year, I dropped out and joined a spiritual community in Santa Barbara.
Oh, wow. Okay, I want to hear that story later.
Okay.
Chandrika, did you drop out? Marilyn? No. Okay, cool. Good. It's good. Because what you do once you drop out, you drop back in. It's just where do you find your place? What is meaningful? How can your life be happy and purposeful, right? So my parents dropped out. My parents were street musicians in New Orleans, and they sold banana bread, right? Beautiful stories. And they went to the Krishna love feasts. That's how they came to Krishna, right? So Krishna love feast. We're doing our Krishna love festivals. Free for all. Come and take prasadam. Experience the love of Krishna. Experience love of God, right? Love of God is a two-way street. We've been talking about this also. I'm just going to try to serve God and love God, but what's in it for me? Love of God is a two-way street. Love of God. It's experiencing the love of God. And it's the love of God. All right? Love of God is a two-way street. Okay, Tirtha, you can write notes. This is your title. Love of God is a two-way street. Love of God, I love God. But we don't say love for God. Love for God, one way. It's love of God. The joy of love of God, that is Premananda. And the joy of loving service, that is Sevananda. So it's the nature of the soul to love God, and it's the nature of God to love each soul. Okay? It's the nature of the soul to love God, and it's the nature of God to love each soul. And that's the relationship. And so we realize our relationship and our love, we are a particle of consciousness. God is infinite consciousness. And so his love for us is like an infinite flood of nectar in our life. And we enter that ocean of bliss. And our love for him, even though it's, there's an ananda, bliss within our nature, our form. And it's finite, it's a particle, the particle of bliss that is your essence. You are existence, you are awareness, and you are a particle of bliss. A particle of existence, that is the soul. In the Upanishad, it says that the soul is, if you try to measure it in material terms, it's like 1/10,000th the tip of a hair. That's the size of the soul. 1/10,000th the tip of a hair. because it cannot be measured by material terms. But yet, the soul can take the body of a human, the body of an elephant, the body of a giant, the body of a giant tree. It's an expression of the soul. You can look at a giant sequoia, 500 feet tall, 20 feet wide. That whole tree becomes the field of awareness of the soul. I'm speaking in Vedantic terms, but in English, all right? Because I don't want to bore you with terminology. But the field of awareness of the soul is your body. But all of existence is the body of God. And so all of existence is his field of awareness. Therefore, he is omniscient. Okay, does that make sense? Our bodies are the field of awareness for our soul, which is a particle of the supreme whole, part and parcel of God. But God's field of awareness is everything, because all of existence is the expansion of his energy. And therefore his soul, the supreme soul, is aware of everything, because he's God, right? This is the Vedantic understanding. When Mother Yashoda looked in Krishna's mouth, she saw all existence. She saw all space, all planets, all galaxies, and then she saw herself and her relationship with Krishna. So, love of God is a two-way street. That means we are soul, we are small, right? But we are not small. It's like a ray of light, a particle of light. The soul is sometimes described to be like a particle of effulgence, light, because its nature, its swarup, form is effulgent. I'm going from feast topics into spiritual science, but we'll go back to the feast afterwards, okay? But I'm trying to explain what is love of God. Love of God is God loves you. God loves you already. He always has, always will. Krishna says in the Gita, you are my very dear friend. O Arjuna, you are my very dear friend. God loves everyone, always, forever. But we have turned away. And so we are awakening our love of God. That is our process, through the purificatory process of our sadhana, our practices, our chanting, our prayers, trying to clear our consciousness so we come to a state of pure consciousness. And when our consciousness is pure, we can see in the mirror of the heart our spiritual nature and the spiritual nature of God. And we realize our relationship. And therefore the Upanishads say, they give a metaphor that the body is like a tree, and there are two birds sitting on that tree. It's the soul and the super soul. Right? You see a tree, you can see a tree with like two arms, pillar, But seated in that tree of life, God is present, and you as an individual spirit, you are present. And the nature of the Atma, the individual soul, and Paramatma, the supreme soul, is love. Ananda. That love, its quality is bliss. So love is the vastu. Love is you could call it the essential element of existence. One of the essential elements of existence. It's a thing, it's a substance. What did we call it yesterday? A nitya cheese. That's Sanskrit for an eternal thing. Nitya is eternal and cheese is a substance. And it's a good word in English also. So we just said it spontaneously so everyone liked it, right? So nitya cheese. It's a good way to remember it. Love is an eternal substance, but its quality is bliss. So it's like a noun and an adjective. Okay? What is a noun? A person, place, or thing, right? So love is the essential thing of existence, holding it all together. That is the nitya cheese. Okay? It's the eternal thing, proper noun, the most proper noun. And there's the essential person, that is God, and then each soul. Each soul has a name. Okay? So in spiritual life, when we join, you get a spiritual name. That's a placeholder name until you realize the name of your soul. And this is it's a long-standing debate amongst spiritualists and transcendentalists and Vedantists. Does every soul have an essential nature, or does every soul, is it malleable? Is our essential nature malleable, or is it fixed? And actually, in material life, it's malleable. I have my personality in this life, but when I'm a cat, I have a different personality. This is the science of reincarnation. The soul is always transmigrating according to its desires. And it's described, there's many stories. I'm not going to get too far into the details. There was a great saint, and he developed love of God. He was close. He was on the threshold. There's a threshold stage to realizing pure love of God. And that threshold stage is called bhav. And what happens at the stage of bhav is your heart is filled with so much love, because it's as much love of God as you can contain within this material body, because it's a transcendental thing. But at that threshold, it's easy to become attached because your heart is overflowing with love. And so anything, you see a tree and you fall in love with the tree. This is how it happens, I'm telling you. The pure devotees, they see God in everything. They fall in love with a blade of grass. I remember the first time our dear Kalindi came. We were having a festival, and she said, I don't want to reveal too much. This is her details, her life. But it was very sweet, right? But she said, I don't want to hear about all this stuff, heaven and hell and God and this and that. But she would look at the grass and see a bee there. She has so much love for God. Her whole life is about love for God. She's just searching for God and love for God. She'd say, oh, look at the bee on the blade of grass, and it's smelling that little bit of, what's the flowers that come here in this summer? In the grass, right? That's the one, right? Is it dandelion? Yellow one, right? And the bee is smelling the dandelion, and it's like God tasting the love of existence. There he is, the soul of existence. We've read verse after verse which says God is the soul of existence. He is the life of the world. Jagat Jivan. God is the life of the world. He's the soul of existence. And so as you develop love of God, you start seeing it everywhere. The gopis see the moon and they think, oh, that rascal Krishna. Right? The devotees see the rain and they think, oh, today Radharani's crying. Or cries tears of joy, or tears of jealousy, tears of anger. We had a ice rainstorm. I don't know what mood was going on. Right? Sometimes there's a rainbow and then it's sunny and there's a little bit of cloud and a little bit of rain. The Puranas say that that's when the demigods are showering flowers on earth. Right? The lovers of God and the great sages who have realized God, they start seeing everything in this, transcendental, the material reality and the transcendental reality, the veil becomes very thin. And which one is more real? Which one is more real? Which one are you more absorbed in? That one is more real. There's a great saint. Why? Because it said, if you see a rainbow, that's the bow of Indra, the god of heaven. And if there's a rainbow out and it's a sunny sky, but there's little drops of rain, everyone ever experienced that? Right? It said that's when the demigods are showering flowers. It means it's very auspicious and the demigods are very happy. So is it real or is it not real? Which one are you more absorbed in? Consciousness? Right? It's the power of consciousness. Don't underestimate the power of consciousness. It said that the soul is more powerful than 1,000,000 suns. This is a scripture. There was an ashram. There's a story of an ashram where the first created being, Brahma, started an ashram, and the god of heaven and the god of the demons, the king of the demons and the king of heaven, Indra and Virochana, both came to the ashram because they heard that the soul is the most powerful thing, the Atma. The soul is the most powerful thing in existence. So it said, we're always fighting each other. If we realize the soul, then we can defeat each other. So this is the original two cousins, their cousin-brother clans, the demigods and the asuras, asura and asura. Sanskrit for demonic forces and divine forces, but on a material level, not transcendental. Sattva and Tama. Anyhow, and Raja. What happened is that the soul is the most powerful thing. That's what he said. So that's the thing I'm emphasizing. The soul is the most powerful thing. And they spent 96 years to realize the soul in his ashram. So people say, oh, ashram, I've been here 6 months. I haven't realized my soul yet. I haven't realized my spiritual nature and my relation with God. I'm going to go and, work in McDonald's. Ashram life, useless. The king of heaven, Indra, and the king of the opposing forces, basically think of it like as angels and demons. We think of demons as a bad thing, but some of the demons are the greatest devotees. It's just an external role. It's a rabbit hole. But the point is, there's like a Christian daemon or an angel, right? They're always at war. But sometimes the angels also rebel. So that's going on in a subtle realm above this kind of material realm. We're in the material realm called Burloka. Beyond that is the subtle realm. And beyond that is actually the transcendental realm, beyond matter. The subtle realm is also material. My point here is that they spent all that time to realize the soul, but why? To defeat each other. They want to defeat each other because the soul is powerful. What I'm telling you is that what is that power of the soul? The power of the soul is that which reality you are more absorbed in, that is the reality you'll be in. That's how reincarnation works. So there was this saint who was on the threshold of pure love of God, at which point you attain your transcendental nature. Simultaneously, that's the highest metamorphosis. We talked about this yesterday. How the caterpillar becomes a butterfly, metamorphosis. So what happens is at this threshold stage, it's said it's like 2 lightning strikes occur simultaneously. Your spiritual form is realized, your material form is no longer necessary. Transformation, metamorphosis. Caterpillar becomes a butterfly from the same transcendental substance. And how it does it is there's a gradual transmission through our practice, our chanting, our prayers. The transcendental energy is gradually transmitted into our soul, that particle of consciousness, which is very powerful because it's a particle of God. It's the God particle. It's very powerful, but it's a particle. And so in connection with the Absolute, in love of the Absolute, in relationship to the Absolute, at that point it has infinite capacity. It has the capacity to conquer. The Lord himself becomes conquered by your love. Doesn't mean you're not able to come under his power. The difference between the soul and God is that God is the all-powerful, omnipotent. But yet by our devotion, even though he is inconquerable, he submits to our devotion. This is his mother. His mother bound him to a grinding mortar. There's a famous story. We celebrate this for a whole month. His mother bound him by her devotion because he was naughty and stealing butter. So understand the beauty of this conception. It's a very beautiful conception. Cultural differences are there in all religions, but it's a very beautiful conception, especially once you start realizing it. So, Bhadad Mars, we'll get back to the feast. I'll tie it together somehow, all right? But Bhadad Mars was on the threshold of pure love of God, and then he started loving everything. I love the tree. I love the grass. I love the birds, because he could see the Spirit of God there as the life force, right? But when you reach that threshold and you start developing that love, you have to be careful not to let that love be directed towards a material attachment, because that can bind you to samsara, material existence. And so there was one story where, this is in the scripture, so it's an essential story of our Bhagavad, our essential scripture. There was a mother deer who was being chased by a tiger, and she was pregnant near his hermitage. And she was jumping through the river, shallow river, as she was being chased, and she gave birth. And in her fear, she gave up her life. But the baby, this little baby deer, was going to die. The tiger took the mother. But what about the baby deer? And so this sage, he went and saved the baby deer. Very good thing to do. The commentators say he did the right thing. You know how you can tell if someone's good or not? There's a philosophical argument, okay? There's a philosophical argument about if someone has a good nature or a bad nature. And it's an argument to say, is human nature essentially good or bad, good or evil? Okay, if there's a well and there's a little baby sitting on the well and you see it about to fall in, will you run to save the baby or not? If you're a good person, you will. So he saved the deer. It was good. But the deer didn't have a mother, so he began raising the deer. And you can imagine a baby deer. Oh boy. We have deer on this property. The other day, I had a deer who was standing right here, and I walked out of our house, and it's like a 200-foot walk to the temple. And the deer was like looking, "Are you my friend? Because you're always nice and you're always feeding us." And then usually deers are very skittish. They're very fearful. It said animal life is full of fear, especially if you're a prey, not a predator, right? So there's afraid. But this deer wasn't afraid, and it started walking towards us, and it walked within like 15 feet. And we said, "Hey, bo." And then Vrindavan took some prasadam, right? And there was its other deer friend was eating our compost, right? Just like right there by the garden. So we said, "Yeah, you know what? No problem. It's good. There's no problem." So the point here is that he took care of this deer as his own child. And the deer grew up, and he would sit and meditate on God, Om, and the deer would crawl in his lap. And kind of like, and he would his eyes would open and Om, but his heart would melt, and he would pet the deer, and with one hand he'd pet the deer, and the other he would chant his Gayatri. Oh. Kids grow up. So what happened is the deer grew up and it made friends. It's his life, right? The kid grows up and he makes friends. And you don't get to enjoy the love of that infancy continuously, because service and love are two sides of the same coin. We say love is service, service is love, right? The expression of love is service, and the power behind service is love. The expression of love is service, and the power of service is love. That's why we're able to serve. Devotees were saying, how is it that we're serving all day and fasting, and then we're still energetic? I said, "Oh, take rest." And I said, "Oh, I want to clean the kitchen," right? Because you have love, therefore you have the power to continue serving, because you have desire for it. But he developed so much attachment to this deer, but the deer started making other deer friends. And it would, not come home on time. Right? It would be late. And he would be chanting, "Oh, where's that deer?" He started chanting, "Deer, deer, dear, 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 dear." He forgot Sri Krishna Sharanang Brahma. He forgot that the soul of existence is God. And he thought this temporary, material conglomeration of molecules in which there's another soul, which is the field of awareness. That deer's field of awareness is another soul, which is also conditioned in material life. Its mother died, it was ate by a tiger, it suffered, it was born in danger. That soul also needs liberation, transcendental life, as every soul does. And real love for every soul is to help them achieve liberation. Because the soul is spiritual by nature, and yet we are in material existence. And the nature of material existence is suffering, but the nature of the soul is joy. So we are suffering in material existence, but we want to be joyful, and we're trying our best. And it's described to be like chasing a mirage of water and embracing a cactus. Happiness in this material world. And there is some happiness, some drops of pleasure, like a camel that chews thorns and tastes its blood. So there's a whole song about that. Chewing the thorns of material enjoyments and tasting the sweetness of my own blood. So our spiritual tradition goes back and forth between what is renunciation of material life and what is attraction to divine life. What is the joy of divine life? So this deer, he saved the deer, he did the right thing. But then when the deer wanted to grow up and have friends and other deer friends, he was disturbed. because he had developed attachment for that material form, and he had forgot the soul in God. And so when he gave up his life, he was on his deathbed. He was an old. This is a fascinating story. India is called Bharat. If you ask any Indian, they're called a Bharatiya. Like, for example, the ruling party is called the Bharatiya Janata Party. Indians, right? So a Bharati, an Indian, the name comes from this person who was the greatest king. He was the king of all of India. And India at that point extended all the way into, Afghanistan and higher up. India was like the size of much larger. And their territory extended beyond. So India ruled the world at that time. We've seen, the Roman Empire, the British Empire, the Spanish Empire, Portugal, the Moguls, the Turks, the Genghis Khan. What is their empire? I don't even know. What, in Russia? Uyghurs? Mongols, okay. Mongols. The Mongols, right? So India ruled the world at that time, and they established Vedic Dharma everywhere. They established the Vedic religion everywhere. And so to this day, if you study ancient artifacts, pre-history, right, pre-modern history, you'll see similarities between all these traditions. The calendars, the gods they worshipped, the culture and tradition. You find this in Eastern Europe. I'm not going to get into this, but there's a whole rabbit hole about this. So the king who established that empire was Bharat. He was one of the great kings who continued that empire. And when he came to elderly age, he retired. Real retirement. We have in the US, we have retirement at 65, right? Some people say you should never retire. I've watched a political commentator. You should never retire. Why? The purpose of life is only work till the last day you die. But no, retirement is to realize God. That's Vedic culture. So he said, I will leave my household. He gave it to, how many sons did he have? I think he had like 80, 90. And some of them were renounced. He's a big king, right? So some of them became great sages. Some of them became administrators and rulers. And he divided the kingdom to them. And he retired and went to the forest and meditated on God. So our forest here is a hermitage where we meditate on God. We try to realize our relationship as a soul in love of God. That is our purpose here. If you're here for any other reason, then you won't find full satisfaction, because that is not a service that we can provide. The service we can provide is a facility where we are protecting that space so that the souls that come here can realize love of God, their transcendental nature. So this great king left home to realize God, and he developed attachment to this deer. And on his deathbed, he was calling out, "Oh, my dear, oh, my dear, oh, my dear, oh, my dear." And the deer had love for him too, because he had raised him. So the deer heard his cries, and he would visit every day. Like we ask our kids to visit, I remember when I left home, tears, tears, tears. Not just mother and father, friends. Oh, be with us in this world. We were worshiping God also, and it's true. It's true. It's not false. But my guru at 10 told me be a monk. I was thinking about this last night, because we like families, we like kids. We are facilitating all of society to be happy and develop relationship with God. So we are not anti-family, we're not anti-kids, we're not anti-anything. Not anti-women, not anti-men, not anti-anybody, any race, any religion, any nationality. We're pro-everything because we're pro-God. But yet my guru told me to be a monk. He said, this is good for you. And he kept telling me again and again. So I embraced that path. But people say, oh, why are you a monk? I said, because that's my service. Why are you a householder? Because that's my service. Why are you a school teacher? Because that's my service to God. Right? Every ashram is a service to God. Because that is the purpose of life. Service and love are two sides of the coin of life, in divine life. And material life, suffering and exploitation. One side of the coin is exploitation. I will conquer and enjoy. I will use people for my own desires. I'll become a demon. And I will suffer as the reactions of my misdeeds, karma. So, Bharat, the deer, came on his deathbed and began snuggling with him. My friend is leaving this world. I will show him my love. Oh my dear, and he gave up his body. Next life, he was born from the womb of a deer. Why? This is the power of consciousness. The soul is the animating force. It's the existence. It's eternal existence, eternal awareness, and the seeking of joy, ananda. That is the soul. Particle of eternal existence, eternal awareness, and ananda, bliss. And we're all seeking that happiness because we are of the nature of the divine source. And his nature is bliss. So his next life, he became a deer. 5-6 more minutes, right? Storytelling is fun, right? All right, we have to recap and do Guru Puja and have breakfast. But these stories are important, okay? Next life, he became a deer. Now, this is the beauty of bhakti. It said if you develop love for God, if you're striving in the path towards love of God, because there's many spiritual paths. Some spiritual paths are mystic powers, knowledge, wisdom, or material prosperity. There's many spiritual paths for many things. But if you're striving on a spiritual path based on devotion to God and trying to realize love of God, any amount of progress you make in that is never lost. You never lose any progress. In other paths, you have to start over. That's how it's described. This is the system, God's system. What are you going to do? Right? You have to start over from the beginning. Karma, Gyan, Yoga, and so forth. So because he had reached such a high stage, he continued to develop. And he did not lose his consciousness, his awareness, and he thought, I made a mistake. So it's not love of different things that is bad. It's good. But one kind of love binds, one kind of love liberates. And it's love of God that liberates. It's love of matter that binds you to matter. Love of God liberates. Love of material things binds you. And so he developed love because that deer was satisfying his urge for happiness, but cannot satisfy it like the joy of love of God. So he progressed in that life, and his next life, we'll rain check the rest of the story, okay? But it's a beautiful story. Otherwise, I don't want to do it injustice by racing. It's a beautiful story. I don't want to do injustice. So we'll rain check up to that point. But this is the threshold stage where you start developing love for God, and that love starts going everywhere. It's like a confused child. I love this, I love that, I love everything. Right? It's just like your eyes are awakening. It's like your first blossoming of real love, Like when you experience that in youth. Therefore, there's a verse when we do worship to Krishna, it says, oh, may I love you like a young boy and girl love each other. Like Romeo and Juliet, may I develop that love for you. That innocent, pure, spontaneous attraction that is called love. So that pure, innocent, spontaneous attraction, not carnal, it's divine romance beyond any kind of lust. It's the natural attraction between the soul and God. And it's pulling you. But there is danger. Material bondage. So therefore, we protect ourselves with good company that helps us. It wasn't helping the deer. The deer wanted to go and do its life, its deer life. And he had done his service. Right? This is the truth. Right? I'm just explaining the scripture in in a way that we can kind of relate with. But it's the truth. So the purpose of the soul is when you develop love of God, then you're blissful. But the soul is nature. Okay, I'm going to finish the story, I promise. I'm trying to tie it back up to the point, right? The point is, which reality do you want to be in? That's the point. That's the power of consciousness. Which reality do you want to choose? We talked about this yesterday. Learn to monitor your thoughts. What am I thinking about? I have a thought journal, all right? And it's bad thought, bad thought, bad thought. Oh, that was okay. And then horrible thought, decent thought, good thought, blissful thought. And then you realize that I'm not my thoughts, and then I can start to choose them. I'm not my thoughts. I can start to choose them. Oh, I liked that one. Let's do that one again. And then you should think, if you're smart, you think, what was the circumstances by which that thought arose? That good thought. That means a good environment, good people, good company. So Bharat Maharaj, he retired completely, but he had no mentor, no guide. He thought, I'll just go into the woods and meditate on God. And our Swami Prabhupada said, if he had a Shiksha Guru, which means a mentor, if he had a mentor, the mentor would have said, come on, man, it's a deer. It's meeting with its friends, has its own life, its own destiny. You raised it, you saved it, you did the right thing. Before you die, go back to remembering God. And he would have gone straight to that spiritual transcendental abode. So good company. Now, the reason we told you that story is that, in this, we'll tell the rest of the story because it's a fascinating story. His next 2 lives and then he gets liberated. He has a deer and then he has one more human life and then liberation. Beautiful story. So, why are we telling this? The soul is a spiritual nature and we are in the material reality. And so therefore we are suffering because the nature of material existence is exploitation and suffering. And there's goodness because there's the soul's nature also, but there's suffering, undeniable suffering, right? But the soul's nature is not to suffer. The soul is spiritual. And so if you develop awareness of God and you focus and develop self-realization, then you can enter the spiritual nature. And the nature of the spiritual nature is that is the place beyond suffering, beyond birth and death. That is its nature. And so there's a saint, another example of a saint who actually developed pure love of God and was liberated in this life. And he would meditate on God as Krishna and as Radha, as lover and beloved, and in their beautiful realm of Vrindavan. And he became so deeply absorbed in this meditation. And this is a relevant pastime because yesterday we celebrate the Festival of Colors. It's the appearance of Lord Chaitanya and the Festival of Colors. So he was meditating. He was sitting and doing his Gayatri. And we chanting the names and the mantras to remember Krishna and serve Krishna. And in his meditation, he entered the pastime where they're throwing colors on each other, coming from different flower pollens. I said we wouldn't have class today, but I think we're going to have a holy class tonight or something. Let's see. He was celebrating this festival in his mind, in his meditation. And because of his very high spiritual stage, this is a mental speculation, it was on a very high spiritual stage, a pure devotee stage. But he was participating in that pastime, throwing colors on Radharani's team, fighting the cowherd boys and Krishna. There's beautiful stories of their battles, right? With flower bombs, flower powder, right? If you've seen it in India, this is how it is. Search Festival of Colors in India. It's just like, whoosh, right? So in that meditation, the colors were coming on his body, on his cloth. And after 1 hour or so, when he came back to external awareness, his cloth was covered in these colors. And they were the fragrant, because the flower, the colors they use in the spiritual world are all flower pollen, saffron pollen, champak, rose, all these different kinds of pollen and minerals. And, even if you have different powders, there's sandal, there's camphor, there's fragrances. And so his body was all in all directions, the fragrance. And all his devotees, all disciples were chanting in ecstasy, right? This is the power of consciousness and the mercy of God. God is the supreme consciousness. It's his mercy, but it's our willingness. It's our desire. So which reality is more real? Which one are you more absorbed in? And it's a sadhana, and it's a rigorous sadhana, therefore it requires strict mentorship. Because otherwise it said any serious sadhana, whether it's Hatha Yoga or any serious sadhana, it's not recommended to practice without guidance. Because there's going to be transformation. You're not going to know what's happening. And if you don't have guidance, then so many crazy things can happen. Many cults formed in that way. Many megalomaniacs go crazy in that way. Many people do crazy things in that way, or there's so many things that can happen. So guidance to check your ego. There's a meme about the ego of enlightenment, right? The enlightened ego. I have checked my ego so well, right? I've become so humble, right? So you need to check that. So guidance, mentorship. But that's only one story. There's many examples, many examples of it. So why are we cooking feasts? Trying to serve and realize, and we use everything material is good because it's coming from the energy of God, but it's how we use it which makes it good or bad for us. Everything is God's energy. So we use all these material elements, the incense, the ghee wicks, the flowers, the ghee, the honey, the sugar, all the different preparations, all the different varieties of things we can cook, and we cook it for His pleasure. And then we honor it. Right? And we see, oh, did I do it right? What can I improve next time? Right? So Raghunath was doing these festivals. For 2 years he did festivals, and what happened next, we'll talk about next time. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Go.